Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
Our guest today is Roberta Matuson. She is known as the talent maximizer. She's been a consultant for over 25 years as the president of Matuson Consulting, has helped leaders in highly regarded companies like General Motors, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, Microsoft, and several small to medium-sized businesses, helping leaders across the world. She's the author of 7 books. She's so magnetic. She's so vibrant. She's got so much energy. She wants to share her ideas from her experiences and many others that she's interviewed and coached. We talk about a lot of the challenges in today's world with some tips on how to overcome and how to bring out the best in people to create new spaces where people can thrive. Enjoy the show. Take it in, dig in. It's really relevant to help you live your possible and help bring out the best in people all around you every day. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast. It's so awesome to have you on the show. How you doing?
I am great. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Even though you're in Cape Cod and I'm not, I'm a little jealous about that.
Well, somebody has to be here.
That's a good point. And it is still summertime as we're recording this. So again, thanks for being on the show. And, I see that you are the talent maximizer, and I'm curious about, what you're up to these days and what you're passionate about and what you're seeing out in the world.
Well, I am up to maximizing talent, and that means both maximizing somebody's personal talent as well as talent in organizations. And, today I'm seeing a whole different landscape than we probably saw months ago in terms of the shift in the labor force. So it's kind of an exciting time to be helping organizations, attract the right people and helping them keep those people.
Yeah, it's pretty critical. And I got to say, there's a lot of challenges. The pandemic, albeit it slowed us down, yet I feel like it's a lot faster and we have a lot more to do. What do you think about that? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think that people have put that behind them. And now they're readjusting the size of their teams. And we got a lot of stuff going on. I think they're trying to move faster to make up for lost time. And that requires a different skill set. So we're just seeing a lot of, I don't know, it feels like chaos. Today, I think I think Apple is laying people off. Like Apple never lays people off. So here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those things, laying people off, as we all know, it helps out short term, but in the long term, it actually hurts the company. It hurts the culture. It hurts what's really possible out there. So it is something about, are we slowing down enough? Because I feel like we are busier, as you said, we have more to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about your take on this. Like, what's drawing that for us? Why is that happening? Why are we feeling that way? Because you're talking to leaders every day. Like, what are they telling you?
Oh, they're telling me that they are overworked. I mean, they have so much stuff on their plate right now because as their teams have been cut, I mean, the work isn't going away.
Yeah.
And so they're asking their team members and they themselves are being asked to do more with less. And people and their senior leaders want it faster. So it's pretty stressful. I think, I'm sure you're reading the headlines about so many mental health issues today in the workplace, and people are stressed. And when you're stressed, you're not really going to give your best work. It's impossible to do that. So,
yeah, like what's something that comes to mind for you that you're helping leaders to think through that, how to balance that a bit, especially with everything you just said. Our well-being matters, and we've seen all the stats out there. I think 20% of workers feel like their boss actually truly does care about their well-being. And that another 50%, something like that, where they're saying they care about my well-being, but that feels dishonest. And the rest, I have no idea. So,
I mean, it comes back to that precious commodity time, right? Like some bosses, like they would love to care about your well-being, but they don't feel like they have time to care about your well-being. So, a lot of what I write about in the book, Suddenly in Charge, which the section on managing up is that, you've got to manage your boss. And if you're one of these people listening today who's in a situation where, the stress levels at work and at home are just, on red alert, you have to communicate that to your boss because, you may think, oh my gosh, can't they tell like my hair's on fire? But they're not looking up. They won't see your hair. So you have to manage your boss and make sure that, you let them know that, hey, I need to pause here for a minute, catch up.
Yeah, I think our world is a little bit more open to that. Yeah, folks that I see in the workplace might be a little hesitant to say, yeah, I'm seeing red, or I just can't function the way I need to be able to get this work done. And leaders have to play a big role in embracing what that looks like in those situations. How do you suggest leaders to listen and accept that for what it is today? Because as you know, the different millennials and different generations that are coming in to our workplace, that it's not a wish list. This is a demand at this point.
This is a demand from Gen Z, which will be your biggest, sector of the workforce fairly soon. I think it comes back to the communication. And like I'm doing a lot of work now with organizations to help their leaders become better communicators and to do a better job of engaging their people so that they do have a sense of what the pulse is, what's going on when the red lights are flashing. And it takes time to develop these relationships. And, as you and I were talking earlier, lots of people are suddenly in charge. And just because you are anointed a manager or a leader doesn't mean you know how to lead. So,
Mhm. That's so true. Yeah. And I think even the level of understanding the skills and beyond the skills of how we actually show up, how do we display ourselves, how do we being there for people so folks understand that they actually are in this environment where they can raise their hand or speak up or ask for help. Because certainly the way I was taught, and when I was taught to become a leader, I was told, get it done, have all the answers, you're in charge, can't ask for help, just do it and work extra time if you have to.
well, you just startled me because I heard you say when I was taught how to be a leader, I'm like, you had leadership training? I'm so impressed. Like your company invested in that. And now you're saying, no, I just had a leader who basically told me, like,
Yeah.
keep moving, dear dude.
Well, exactly. It is a little bit of management training. I wouldn't say leadership training, which is different. To your point too, I think there's a distinction there about learning from leaders that were before us, what not to do and what to do. It's basically on how I felt in different situations, and even my own experiences where I failed. And I've heard you talk about that. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, people ask me, where do you get your material, right? I mean, everything that you read that I've written, like all over the place, and I talk and I do speeches, like it's real, people, it's real. And, when you read in my books, like, the horrific leader that I had and how I was abused at work, I mean, I learned from her everything about leadership because everything she did, I did the opposite
Exactly.
because I was like, oh my gosh, like this can't be right.
Right.
I'm going to do this. This has to be better. So yeah, I think you brought up a great point that it's great for our listeners to take in the fact that, man, people are watching you and they're learning from you and they're learning all the good things and then the bad things. And then they're going to treat their people in a similar way. So really think twice, before you do things.
It's so true. Yeah, we emulate that. We walk the talk of what someone's telling us to do. And that's it. Our society's doing the same thing. I think there's a lot of what people tell us what we should be doing or believing or thinking, and it's very divisive. And there's not a lot of room for us to explore and how do we develop and how are people developing today as you think about how we get better in this place? Because it's just like when we talk about leadership and you talk about it, it's like you could read so many things, but if you don't take what you're sharing and practice this, it's like you telling people to ride a bike by reading the book. It's like, no, you can't really learn how to ride a bike until you get on the bike. So how are people taking the time? How are you getting people to take what you're sharing? Because you have so much wisdom in your books and how you display what you're sharing out of the books and your stories. How do people take that into practice? And if maybe you have an example.
Well, I mean, you bring up a great point because, you and I were talking earlier. I've written 7 books. Okay. So I can tell you that as much as I would love your listeners to go and buy my books and download them and read them, like you're not going to learn how to be a great leader just by reading a book or 7 books or 10 books. It comes down to, having what I believe is a strong coach. So when I was suddenly in charge at age 24 and thrown into the executive suite, at least my boss had the common sense to say, well, maybe she doesn't quite know like how things work here in the executive suite. And so he gave me a coach, and it was the greatest gift that he could have given me. My coach's name was Rocky, and that was before the movie. So, and he was this older gentleman. So when you saw him, believe me, he did not look like Sylvester Stallone. But man, he threw a punch, and he was really great at guiding me. And so what I have learned from him and what I try to do is, I use my books with my clients just as a resource, and then I guide them, and we work together in an executive coaching role, or when they're part of my group leadership circle, things like that. That's how they really learn, because you can read and apply, make a mistake, correct. But if you're just sitting there reading, if you're just sitting there taking online courses, again, I have a number of online courses on Udemy and LinkedIn Learning. Unless you're applying these things, you're just like, watching a movie. So
Yeah, funny you say that about watching a movie. I used to have a boss that would come to my office and be frustrated. It's like, why is everybody acting like they're not part of the movie? They're just watching the movie. Why can't they go in and be the star of a movie?
and I take it you weren't working in Hollywood.
No, I was working for a financial services company. So far from Hollywood.
But it could have been a Hollywood movie, right?
It could have, oh my God, it could have been. This same leader also said, we need to get uncomfortable with what we're doing. And back then, when I was a younger manager leader, exactly the reaction I had, which was at the time, I have to be uncomfortable. Like I got to be walking on pins and needles, or what's that distinction?
Like, what
I,
does that mean?
I now get it a bit because I actually just listened to a wonderful podcast with Janice Allig and Heather LaValle. Heather LaValle is the CEO of Voya, and she talks about being uncomfortable in the way of learning, like we're talking about growth mindset, being uncomfortable and willing to actually, like you're an example with a coach, you're willing to listen and take those punches, which I refer to as love punches. We're willing to actually hear it because we want to get better, we want to get stronger,
Mm-hmm.
we want to get uncomfortable. So we have that ability to actually move into this space to
Mm-hmm.
grow. So I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, look, here's a prime example. I play pickleball. Okay,
Nice.
I will admit it. I'm a fanatic. I hired a
You must
coach.
be pretty good, right?
I am getting very good. At least some people are choosing me on their teams. And I hired a coach to help me. And, he said, as I was practicing my drop shots, he said, you're going to get a lot worse before you get better. So, when you're playing, a lot of your shots aren't going to go in. But if you continue with the strategy that we've outlined, you're going to get a lot better faster. And that's what I've done. And on the other hand, my spouse, who I love dearly, is not implementing our learnings. And he keeps saying, I don't understand why I'm not getting better. So, it sometimes you're going to get worse. And even in the game of leadership, you're going to get a little bit worse. But eventually, if you work through the process and if you have a good coach and you've got a great strategy, you're going to come out a winner.
Yeah, that's great. I love that analogy too. And I understand it's not just incremental. Maybe at first you step back and all of a sudden, suddenly you're just getting it, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. And people on the other side are like, whoa, who is that?
Well, Roberta, I want you on my team if we ever play in the Cape or if you're in Connecticut, right? Let's find the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. Let's go get them.
Let's go get them. Exactly. Now, you have one of the books really kind of drew me in, no pun intended, about talent, magnetism, and the magnetic leaders. Another book. What does it take to be a leader that is magnetic, and what does that mean? And I've heard a few references about this in recent weeks. I had Stephen Morris on my show recently. He talks about it, and that was the first time I really understood it. And I know you talk about it in your books. I'd love to hear your perspectives so the audience can hear your view.
Yeah, for me, magnetic leadership is when you have people that will follow you no matter where you go, right? They're just stuck to you, as
Yeah.
opposed to those leaders that repel talent, right? And we all know who they are. So it's really the magnetic leaders that I know, they've become that way because they're authentic, right? They tell it like it is. They're compassionate, They take the time to know their people. They're different. They're not like, the one and done guys or gals. Like, okay, it's a transaction and we're done. It's more of a relationship, and they take the time to build that. And then that's why when they go to another company, like 3 weeks later, they get this call, hey, Darrin, how you doing? What's new? Hint,
Right.
hint,
Right.
right?
All right. What's going on over there? All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
They're just
good.
hoping, like, oh, please, please, I need to go with you.
It's funny. Some leaders might be listening and saying, why do you tell people what it is? Yeah, I think there's a thread that you said after that that's really important about not only you're authentic, you tell people the way it is, but there's a genuineness and compassion, the compassion element of understanding what we're saying and it's connecting to that individual. And we all receive information slightly differently. So I love that too, because I've heard people say, I'm so direct. Well, okay. You can imagine
Well,
what that looks like.
I can because I'm from New York. So I always say to my clients, look, I'm from New York. I can tell you how it is from New York, or I can take the California approach. you know, I can be a little softer. Just tell me what works for you. And I think just about everyone's like, just give me the New York. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Let's go. Right. Now tell me, what else are you hearing is a challenge out there in the workplace today?
Well, I think I'm hearing that, especially in the world of recruitment right now, there are so many people looking for jobs that when there is a job opening, the hiring managers are overwhelmed. They
Mm,
don't even know they don't even know how to sort through all these resumes. And, so they're just like picking like anybody because they just want this process to be over. And as you and I know, when you do that, that's when the problems really begin because they may not be the right fit, and then you have to spend all this time like trying to get them out of the organization. So it's this really bad cycle
yeah. Yeah.
that you create for yourself. So it's really about finding the right people for your team and then inspiring them to, like your book, live your possibilities.
Yeah. No, you're right. And taking that time again, back to that time thing, it takes time to find the right people and establish, what that fit looks like to your point. Like, do we have the right values? Values that people want to be drawn into, be pulled into, like your magnetic leadership, component. We got to make sure that's in place. And I love that. You know, I've had to hire too. And it's like, you go out into Indeed, you go out into different places, LinkedIn, love the resources. Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yes, it is. And just imagine for the job seeker, because I don't know if this is just a LinkedIn premium feature, but when you apply for a job, it tells you how many people have already applied.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like within the hour, it's like, over 100 applicants, and you're like, oh man, like this is a waste of time. And that person who's saying that is probably right, and they might have been your perfect candidate. So
Yeah,
that's
you're
very
right.
unfortunate.
Yeah, you're right. And I think even just the nature of it being through online, even through LinkedIn or different tools, I think the etiquette's gone to the wayside for the most part. Just being on the other side of it, I had looked for some roles after I had left Mass Mutual, and yeah, it's weird. Like there were times where you don't get callbacks, or you don't get follow up, or you just don't get the decency of what the outcome was. And I don't know what happened because that used to be the way of the world. I don't know.
I know, like I just went through 6 interviews. Like, could you send me like a canned email saying thanks, but no thanks? But no, that's
Yeah,
really discouraging. And I think what companies don't realize is that they're really tarnishing their employer brands.
yeah,
And, the pendulum has swung back. I'll admit that it'll swung back so that it's more of an employer's market, but
mm,
it is going to swing the other way again if you look at the
yeah,
demographics. And people are going to remember, like, oh, you're the company that treated me like that. I'm going to tell my son or daughter, do not apply there, or I'm not going to
yeah,
buy your product. I'm going to get somebody else's product. I don't need to give you my business. So I think it's really important that organizations look at the way candidates are being treated
yeah,
and really do a much better job of treating them properly.
yeah. I mean, it's a common decency, level of respect.
I
To your
mean,
point.
if you think about it, right, everybody's using AI.
Yeah,
You can't get an AI tool to send out a thanks but no thanks note. Like, what's wrong with you?
yeah, I agree with you. That seems like it's a no-brainer. As long as you don't send me multiple ones, I'll just send me one.
Or in my case, get my name right.
Yeah.
I remember when I came out of college, I interviewed with Shell Oil, a very prestigious opportunity.
Yeah.
And I went and I was flown to Parkersburg, West Virginia. So I'm a gal from Boston, right,
Mhm.
and New York, and I'm being sent to this place that I've never seen in my life nor experienced. And I remember going through these, full day of interviews, and this was 30 plus years ago,
Wow.
and that and then I got my rejection letter, and it didn't even get my name right. It was like, "Dear Robert."
Oh my
I was
goodness.
like, "Don't you like? I don't look like a Robert." So it's like, okay, people get the names right.
Yeah. It's, you know what, it's getting the basics right. It's that level of respect and, distinction.
Yeah.
I think I think it's a lot of how we're leaning in today and how we're working together, especially, to get the right talent, drawing the right talent in. And it's just something about how we, lean into the work that's really, really special. And I'm working with this company called Be Generative too. And there's one of the distinctions we talk about is around standing in a posture of responsibility for the lives you touch. And
Mm.
imagine if companies took that and actually believed in it, because people have the choice to work in different places, regardless of which market it's in. Just imagine if we took that stance of we actually have a responsibility for the lives we touch, the people we work with, and the extension to our customers and clients.
Oh, please, please, please get them to stop saying people are her greatest assets. Like, please make them stop. I mean,
So
if you
funny.
really believe it, great. But if you're kind of like, well, maybe not, like, please stop saying it. Like, that's where the authenticity comes in. Like,
Yeah.
some organizations are like, you know what? We're going to pay you really well, but we're going to ask a lot of you. I'm A-okay with that. Being transparent, they're telling you like it is, but don't say, oh, we're family. Like, we take
Yeah.
weekends off when like you've got people working like till midnight every night.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a good point. And I think it's backwards because it's funny. I feel like we've worked together because there was a CEO at another company. That was the first thing they would say out of every, town hall. And I would sit there, Roberta, like you just said, I'm like, how are we the greatest asset? I'm not a dollar sign. I'm not a tool. It's like, wait, I'm culture. I'm a big impact. All the thousands of people that work there drove the outcomes. And I think that's the distinction is usually that's the last thing in the mind of leaders. It needs to be the first. People and culture drive process or practices, which drives experiences for them and their customers and clients, which then drive out people wanting to buy and stay with you and your customers to want to buy more and stay with you. And it's that cycle that we get to reinvest back into our people that actually gets this experience that's magnetic that you talk about.
Profitability.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's called profit, right? Because they have profit. The company makes money, so they can give some to the shareholders, and they can put it back into the company, and they can develop their people. So it is a cycle, and it works.
Yeah, so they can hire you to go speak and bring in some leadership coaching and consulting. I think it's so important that we slow down. We need to slow down to do that.
Yeah,
We need to
we
recognize
need.
our
Yeah,
impact and our parts in these efforts.
we do. We absolutely do.
How do you suggest we do
Let's just pull the plug.
that?
So today on LinkedIn, I follow this gentleman who started his own advertising agency, and I think he's doing a fabulous job. And he wrote a note today on LinkedIn. He said, "Our offices are going to be closed on Friday, and you and I are speaking just before Labor Day weekend." And he's like, "For no reason other than our employees deserve an extra day off." So like he's just shutting the joint down. They're going to get a 4 day weekend. Like, that's it, folks, right? And all these people are like applauding, including me, like, wow.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like, let's do something for the people and not worry, like, oh, that's going to cost me $10,000 for that day of pay.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Now, what's your take on 4-day work week? Because I've heard different parts of the world are exploring with that. I've even heard some are going to 6 days. But what do you think of 4 days?
Well, I will tell you this. I worked a 4 day work week,
Yeah.
and I'll be honest with you, I was exhausted. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, because I would get to work, it's 7 in the morning, and I wouldn't leave until 7 at night or whatever the number was.
Okay.
Because just because you're working a 4 day work week doesn't mean you're working 40 hours.
Yeah. Right.
So if you want to get all your work done, it could take 12 hours. And so then add your commute time. And it was pretty exhausting.
Yeah.
And before your listeners say, yeah, but you're not as young as I was your age when I did it. So I think it's not for everyone. I think it just depends on the situation. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying that before somebody raises their hand and saying, yeah, yeah, give me a 4-day work week, try it out and see whether your body rhythms like work with that. And I'm pretty high energy and I was quite surprised. By the time Friday came around, I was so tired I couldn't do anything on my day off.
Yeah, no, that's a good perspective. I think it's got to fit for individuals and even companies, right? There's different companies that need to have folks on site certain number of days, maybe it's rotated, and we're all different. So I think that's good perspective. Now, how are you feeling about the hybrid environment and how's that working as you're talking with clients and what are you seeing out there about the hybrid environment? How are people resolving this?
Well, I love it. I think it's a great recruitment tool because, we spend so much time trying to get to and from work. And then when we're working from home, we can get so much done and we can multitask and so I love it. And I have clients that have embraced it.
Yeah.
So and that gives them a recruiting edge, right? Because if your company is requiring everybody comes to the office and I'm recruiting for the same people and I'm like, you know what? You can work from home 2 days a week and we're paying the same. Who do you think is going to get the candidate?
Yeah, because I still feel people are struggling with the whole concept. And, I think there's been a lot of good support about having some time together or creating different ways of communicating. So people are having connections so they're not lost. I think hybrid environment is good. Like I enjoy spending the time doing 45 minutes worth of work versus actually driving. Sometimes I like to drive because I want to listen to music or make a phone call. I usually reach out to my family and some friends. It's a good time to do that. As I'm singing down the road, either way. So
Yeah, you can have a sing along.
yeah, exactly. That's great. That's awesome. Now, I keep peppering you with questions about the marketplace. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
this is fun. Like, I feel like we're in this like interview that everybody's watching. So anyway, everybody's listening and hopefully, getting some popcorn and not just watching the movie, but thinking about how they're going to apply this. AI,
Yeah.
how is it playing out? How are people using AI? How are people connected with AI? How do you see AI in the future?
I'm loving AI. I think that there's so many benefits to AI that can make our lives so much easier and can take away the grunt work. So things that we don't like to do and therefore free us up to do things that are more creative.
Yeah, I think it's something that we need to truly augment, right? I think about AI as augmented intelligence, about how we could actually double down on things that we might enjoy more, we can get creative more, that's maybe a little bit even more complex that requires humanity to step in different capacity. So yeah, I'm with you. I still have some work to do to get full use of the tools that are out there, and to help out, consultants. I'm sorry, and to help out companies and leaders not to shy away from the tools and figure out how we're going to
Mhm.
use them in a better capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having fun. Like sometimes, I'll be writing an article and I've written thousands of articles like for Forbes and Fast Company and places like that. So there's a lot of my stuff out there. And sometimes I'm just like tired. I'm like, okay, you know, write an article on this topic in the voice of Roberta Matuson based on her books, blah, 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 blah. And then it comes back and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm cheating. They're my words, they're
Yeah,
my books, they're my thought leadership. But then I go back through and I'm like, okay, that's not, punchy enough. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to make it brief. I'm going to adjust it to my audience. But, there are those times when you're sitting there going, I don't even know what to say today.
I love it. It's a great way to think about it. That 90%, 80% of the content's there. You're spending your time on how to make it better for what it is
Mm-hmm.
today. What's going on today?
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I use it personally for trip planning and
Yeah.
recipes. And, I don't want to be in the kitchen all night. It's like, give me a recipe, 3 ingredients, 5 minutes, no cleanup.
all of a sudden, I bet your phone just lit up with a recipe right now. So Siri's
Oh,
listening.
I bet you. I'll share it with you guys,
All right.
and you can put it in the show notes when it comes up.
That'd be great. That's awesome. That's fun. Yeah, I also school systems. I'm hoping school systems are starting to embrace that, your approach in that way, because when it first came out, with my kids who are teenagers were told you're not allowed to use it. And at
Hmm.
some point, we need to figure out how to teach the kids how to use it. And I love the way you talked about it, right? It gives us 80%, and how do we actually use 20% maybe to do some contrasting, some critical thinking analysis, something that allows us to start to take it and figure out how we're going to use it. Because I feel like that's the future. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it's good that they're limiting it in schools. So you and I have the experience. So if I ask AI to compare this concept with that concept, and they give me something that just doesn't make sense, I know it doesn't make sense. I'm like, no, 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 no. Either I didn't ask the question the right way, or it's misinterpreted, or it's just a bad tool that I'm using. But if you don't know what the truth is, it's like I'll give you an example. When my children were in school, I'll never forget this. My daughter would, tell me that Wikipedia was a source. I'm like, no, I think anyone can go in there and change that. And it wasn't until, she was in middle school when her teacher said, like, you cannot cite Wikipedia, when she had that aha moment. And I was like, yeah, probably not like a validated source that you should be using. So if you don't know and you're using AI and it's telling you what to think, then I think that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what's your take about joy at work? How would you define it? What's it look like?
I don't know what it looks like because I think that there isn't a lot of it these days. Honestly, I wish we had more joy at work. I wish we were able to, as you mentioned earlier, to just slow down a little bit and embrace like these moments and the fact that we're doing something really cool in our jobs and we're helping to improve whatever we're doing. And I don't think we celebrate joy enough.
Yeah, I think in the joy, we could see it. It actually repeat itself if we could actually recognize it and receive it. Let's talk about you for a second. Like you said, people ask you, how did you get here? Like, how did you get all these experiences like that, that shaped you, that you put into these books? Like, are there a couple that come to mind that are just like a thread line that says, oh my God, was a big awakening for me?
Yeah. When I was 24 years old, I worked for a commercial real estate company in Houston. And I came into the office one day only to be called into the president's office, which was very rare because usually my boss went in, not me. And he told me that he had just fired her. And so I did what I thought any other 24-year-old would do. And I asked for her job. And my boss was an executive. And I thought, well, I'm 24. I have a year of experience. I have co-op experience. I went to Northeastern. I'm smart. I can figure this out. I deserve this job. And he actually gave it to me. And that is the story. That's suddenly in charge. And that's the thread line throughout my work of being tossed into management with little more than a prayer. And as a woman in a male dominated industry, having to figure out how the heck to survive. And that's why I do a lot of coaching, a lot of executive coaching. And I really enjoy working with women because like I know what it's like to be in the executive suite. I know what it's like when people are talking over you or taking credit for your ideas. So I feel like I can really help them and get them to a better place. So for me, that's really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. Are people suggesting that that's getting better? Because I've witnessed that firsthand, and I'm sure I was not the best partner leader as a male leader. I know there's times where maybe there are ideas I should have taken or listened to in a different way, right? Instead of maybe somebody else's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it might be industry specific as to whether or not it's getting better. I think it's obviously company dependent. There's still a lot of, we still have a long way to go.
I find it fascinating. Some people don't see that. So it's one of those things. If we
Well, they're usually men, and they're usually men who are Caucasian,
yeah.
and they could be my brother who's like, I don't understand that. Like, no, of course you don't. Like, has that ever happened to you? And by the way, you have four Caucasian sons. So it's not quite happening to your daughter. So like, how would you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just to validate, your point, like I didn't know, as part of my journey 8 years ago, I did have this awakening that I was part of the problem, and I changed to figure out that, the privilege that I had been given that I didn't know I had at the time, it was my responsibility to use it differently, and that was really the impetus for my journey, which started me writing the book Live Your Possible, starting the company Ignite Happy, and consulting for better cultures and equality and inclusion, joy at work, and possibilities that are there in the space where leaders are welcome and looking to be magnetic in your terms. I had to realize, like, I thought I was one of the good leaders and I wasn't. And I had these biases I didn't recognize. And I committed to change. And, I only say this not because I did it right or that I took all the right steps. It's just that it takes a minute for us to recognize. We sit there and listen to what we're saying and what we're doing. Are we actually coming across the way we want? Is our identity truly what we're saying it is? And it's those actions and words, and are they tied to something that's more meaningful? And to me, more meaningful is everybody has that voice and has that beautiful, I'll call it a beautiful voice, because there's ideas and creativity and possibilities at the table that I never really listened to fully, like the differences that were there, the uniqueness that was there. And once I did, my world opened up like never before. So I only say all that because if you are a white male leader, stop and listen. If you and open your heart up, because it's not about self-preservation. You're not giving up anything. And in fact, you're going to get a lot more. It's an expansive world out there if you do this.
Right. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's really our behaviors that matter, not our intentions, right? So, you might intend to, you know, treat your female employees the same way as you do your male employees. But if your behaviors just are showing that that's not really true, that's what really matters. And I think what you've done, it sounds like you've changed your behaviors, which I imagine took a lot of work because it's not easy to change those habits.
No, it's I'm still working on it. I mean, let's be honest, right? I had 40 plus years of what I was told to be as a leader and what I believed in people because of, who they were and where they came from. I needed to change that from that step forward. And it's every interaction to look at people differently, looking at people with possibilities that are filled with all this joy and opportunity. That who am I to say they're not able? What it should be is, no, I'm going to help people see it through.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, I think that's the opportunity I think we all have. And you're doing that with hundreds of thousands of people, which is amazing. And I appreciate you letting me share that too, because uh, I think when we step into these conversations and you had those experiences when you're 24. And by the way, if you're 24, I don't know how many people would have said, I want that job, by the way. So I'm impressed by that. But if you're 24 or whatever age, there's always time to step back and grow and get a coach or, ask for help and not really come in knowing all the answers, because when you truly reach out to others, that's really where it becomes very expansive.
Absolutely. And I laugh because my daughter's 24 and I'm looking at her going, oh my God, if that happened to her, I would be freaking out. Like as her mother, like, oh my God, you can't take this job. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Right.
I'm gonna have to help you or whatever because like I don't know how I did it,
Yeah,
but I did.
that's awesome.
I lived to write about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm curious about, yes. Yeah, I want to hear how that goes too with your daughter. That's fascinating. I'm curious what your take is. So the name of this podcast is Live Your Possible. What comes to mind to you? How would you define it in your terms? And it's your terms, not my terms and how I talk about the show or anything. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge that I see with my clients, and I would imagine for a lot of people listening today, is are those self-limiting beliefs, right? And so how can you live your possible when you're like, well, I'm not really good enough yet, or I don't really have the skills, or why would they give me that job? Or, if only I had finished my college degree, even though I have more experience than anybody else here, And so I think we just have to let go and give ourselves permission to dream and ask for what we want. And who knows, you might actually get it.
Yeah, we need to dream and we actually have to put it out there. I agree with you.
Yes. You can't just dream and then wake up and not tell anybody.
Even if you start with one word, I'll suggest. It could be one of your amazing words that you have in your books, magnetic or whatever that is, for you as a listener, because pick the one word. We all know it's going to show up. So if you want to lead with love, you want to lead with a sense of wonder, whatever the words are, just say it every day. This is what I'm going to be. This is who I'm going to be. And to your point, you got to put it out there. If that ties to your greater meaning or your dreams, even better. It's gonna lead its way there.
Absolutely.
Before we close out, I know we're gonna put a bunch of links about your amazing books and how to reach you, Roberta. I don't know if there's anything in particular you wanted to share about that, and if there's anything else that's top of mind that you want to talk through. We've covered a lot of ground. So if there's other things that you're saying, I want to share this or I want to dive into this, let's make sure we do that too.
Yeah, well, I think we need another episode, but
I agree.
I would love to hear from your listeners, and if they want to write to me directly, Roberta@MatusonConsulting.com. If they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please just send a note when you make that request, just saying, hey, I heard you on this podcast, so I know who you are, so I don't go like, who's that? Delete.
Right.
And I would just really like to say that it's just been an absolute pleasure having this conversation and, having the ability to influence your listeners and for them to hopefully dream big and make it happen.
Yeah, thank you for joining the show. This has been a treat, and thanks for all your wisdom and your stories. And I look forward to our next chat and maybe some pickleball too.
Oh, me too.
Take care.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.